Hello, my name is John Rees. I'm a chiropractor based in Ilkley in West Yorkshire. I've been in practice in Ilkley for the last 23 years. And this is one of a sequence of videos that we're doing that relates to, well, our generic title is How My Body Works. And we're just doing a series of short videos such that if you wish to learn a little bit more about your body and how it works, these videos, one after the other, can hopefully assist you. So today we're focusing on the spine. Anatomically, the spine is made up of 24 bones. These bones are known as vertebrae. And the spine is made up of 3 zones. The neck, or what we call the cervical spine, the thoracic spine, in the middle, which is where the rib cage is, and then the low back or lumbar spine, which is the low back area just above the pelvis. The neck contains 7 vertebrae, the thoracic spine 12, and the lumbar spine 5, making up our 24 bones. In essence, each of the bones or the vertebrae of the spine are the same. The only difference really is that as you go down the spine, because each vertebra as you go down is holding the vertebra above it and those above them, it gets bigger and bigger, more in depth than anything else. There are 2 exceptions to these vertebrae, and they're found at the very top of the spine. So if you look at each individual vertebra shape-wise, at the front you have sort of quite a fat bony bit, that's what we call the vertebral body, and then coming out the back and therefore to the sides of the vertebral body you have 2 lot of arms which we call the pedicles, and then they keep on going, and it's partway towards the back of the spine they change their name and called the lamina, and at the very back those 2 lamina fuse and you get the knobbly bit that you can see if you're looking at the back of someone's spine, which we call the spinous process. At the point at which the pedicles change their name to the lamina, you get a pair of facets. Now 2 of those facets of each bone sort of look vertically and 2 look towards the ground. And those interact respectively with the bone above and bone below, and hence you make a pair of joints per vertebra, and therefore you have 24 pairs of joints made by the facets, as you will see here. Now therefore they're also sort of poking at the side of the vertebra, or near the pedicles, are 2 other little bony prominences, and they're called the transverse processes. So in essence, anything that is projected bony-wise from the main element of the bone is there to optimize the surface area for muscular attachment, and therefore where the tendon of the muscle attaches to the bone. Now, there are 2 bones in the spine that are actually totally different in shape to the other 22, and those 2 bones are the 2 bones at the very top of the spine, the very top of the neck, the very top of the cervical spine. The first bone, which is the one directly underneath the head, is called the atlas. For obvious reasons, it sort of holds the head up, as seen, and that is just a round circular bone, as we show you here, and beneath that is another bone called the axis, and that bone is again different in its shape and unique in its shape to any other bone in the spine. And as you'll notice here, it's got a protrusion, a vertical protrusion, like a peg, and we call that the dens, but it's a bony peg really, and that sits in the ring of the top vertebra, the atlas, and it's held tightly to the atlas by the ligaments relevant to it, and therefore that facilitates your movement to the left and to the right. And so therefore your rotational movement of your neck is solely based really on that bony connection between the dens of the second vertebra interacting with the ringed bony bit of the first vertebra, which they say is called the atlas. Now, you can see here the actual extent of the bony contact points between the spine and the head, and you can notice these two little contact points, I suppose, and that pretty much is your only bony contact with the head. Now, returning to the generic shape of the bones of the spine, the shape of the pedicles becoming the laminae create a hole behind the vertebral body, and that is where the spinal cord goes, so you can see how well protected the spinal cord is from any sort of injury because of the bones around it. The interesting thing about the facet joints is that their location is the same, joint to joint, bone to bone particularly, but their orientation in relation to the spine changes throughout the length of the spine. So if you look at the neck here, you'll sort of see that the joints kind of run parallel to the line of the spine, but when you come down to the bottom, to the lumbar vertebra, they sort of run perpendicular. Also, if you look in the neck, you can see what is slightly unique to the neck bones as opposed to other bones, is the little holes there through which, if you look at this diagram, you can see the vertebral artery, and you can see it moving vertically through the spine here, and at the top, between those two unique bones that we mentioned before, it kind of does quite a tortuous kink before it gets into the brain. If you looked at the side of each vertebra, you would see just towards the back of the vertebra, back of the lamina, if you look at the side, you'd see a little curve which, when it interrelates with the bone below, which has a reciprocal curve, but obviously in the other direction, you effectively make a little hole, and through that hole, at each level of the spine, is where the nerve roots come out. Now, the nerve roots are the component parts of what becomes the nerves. Now, in the neck, in the cervical spine, those nerve roots come out and they amalgamate in different fashions to make 5 named nerves that go down the arm. And in the lumbar spine, they come out, and those 5 or 6 nerve roots, depending on how it's composed, they effectively combine in different combinations to make up the 2 major nerves that go into the leg. The one that everyone's heard of, the sciatic nerve, and one which has as much importance as the sciatic nerve, the femoral nerve. Now, sitting between each of the vertebrae are these rubbery, watery, fatty pads called discs, and most of us, if not all of us, have heard of a disc because we hear of problems that are caused in pain in the legs and irritation of nerve roots by a disc bulge or a disc prolapse, or the worst case scenario, a disc sequestration. Now, as I say, the disc is a rubbery, watery, fatty pad. It's effectively a shock absorber, and it is made up of 2 independent parts. Around the outside of the disc are sort of concentric circles of the fatty pad, and then right in the middle is a sphere, and it's got a bit of fluid inside it, sort of quite turgid fluid, which is unique to the body. And one of the issues that can occur if you have a problem with the disc, such that that central ball, which we call the nucleus pulposus, if that bursts and it seeps through the lamina, seeps through the outside of the disc, because it's unique in the body, funny enough, the body doesn't know it's there in a sense, and the reaction of the body is to think it is an outside agent there's a huge autonomic and sympathetic response to that, and your immune system goes doolally, and people who have those sorts of problems can have immense pain, mostly because of the reaction, the inflammatory reaction to the body not remembering or realizing that the thing that is attacking is part of itself. Now this diagram shows the nerves as they exit the spine. Now, if you were to cut perpendicular through the nerve and look at it at the end, if you like, you would see it was made up of concentric circles. And the outermost part of these concentric circles is where the sensory part is. Therefore, the pain, the numbness, the tingling that you might feel in certain situations comes from that, if that area is damaged. But also, the innermost core parts, the inner concentric circles of the nerve root, that is where the power comes from. That's where the motor element of the nerve comes from. So if you have a more severely injured nerve root, you might have muscle weakness, and in the leg that might mean that you can't lift part of your leg up or walk as well as you could do. And clearly that gives a clinician like ourselves a good indication as to the extent of the nerve root injury. This diagram also shows where the sensory part of the nerve and the motor part of the nerve meet, and they meet just on the exit point of the spinal cord, and that's a little place we call the dorsal root ganglion. So that is just a very short introduction to the spine. There are many other things that we could tell you about, and perhaps in a later video we'll talk about the particular injuries you can get as a consequence of damage to the muscles, the joints and the nerve roots around the spine. So that's it in relation to this video, in relation to the spine. If there's any particular musculoskeletal problem you have, that doesn't necessarily have to be the spine, that you would like some assistance with, please feel free to contact us. Our contact details are here and here. And we look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you. Bye bye.